managing and protecting the world's grueling number of endpoints, enabling Tanium's customers to see, control, and protect every endpoint everywhere. Tanium's mission is to provide certainty in uncertain times with the industry's only converged endpoint management. Trusted by the US military and the majority of the Fortune 100, Tanium helps manage and protect nearly 30 million endpoints. Tanium, the power of certainty. Visit securityweekly.com/Tanium to learn more.
Attacks can't be prevented, but they can be stopped. Modern cyber attackers have already made it inside your network, but you have the upper hand. Find and eradicate threats with ExtraHop network detection and response, and shut them out before real damage is done. Learn the advanced techniques attackers are using and how ExtraHop stops them with a live attack simulation. Register at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. That's extra HOP.
Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Do you have a specific guest or topic that you want us to cover on one of our shows? Submit your suggestions for guests by visiting securityweekly.com/guests and completing the form. We review the suggestions monthly and we'll reach out once we review it. And now for the Enterprise Security Weekly news. All right, guys, there is a lot of news in here. Some very interesting fundings, so let's get going. I think one of the big ones was the Cloudflare. This is a very interesting approach I've actually not seen another company take, where they're taking a bit of their funding, $1.25 billion, and they're using that to get startups onto their own platform. Have you seen this before, Tyler?
I have not. It's a super kind of unique approach, right? Essentially, you're taking some dollars and saying, hey, if you build on top of us, if you build on top of the Cloudflare platform, we'll invest in you, right? And we'll invest for a certain amount of equity. I believe it's an equity swap investment if they build on top. But it's a great way to simultaneously get adoption for your own platform, get people to augment their apps or build on top or configure and maintain, on top of the Cloudflare infrastructure, while simultaneously saying, well, if that's going to be successful, we're going to take a small piece of that company and grow with you. So it's kind of a unique approach I haven't seen before.
No, I do like the fact that honestly, it is a great business model. You look at AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, all of those, that subscription model that every month you have a bill that sometimes is a little larger than you're expecting, but getting people onto a specific platform and providing another redundant platform to offer other than the big three, I think is a good step in the right direction. Cloudflare is offering that kind of that serverless model where you have a lot of developers trying to get to getting a new app out there that's serverless, and adding different redundancy out there and providing financial incentive. I think it's a fantastic business idea.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting about this is I don't think Cloudflare is even putting up most of the money themselves. The money is coming from partner venture capital firms, Altimeter, Altos, Amplify, Bain, Bessemer. Like it's they had to go alphabetical order. There's so many. Lightspeed, Meritech. Most of the money is coming from those guys looking to apply capital in a way that's going to have a reasonable rate of return. And they think that, going on startups that are building on top of Cloudflare makes sense. So it's an interesting approach, and it doesn't even affect Cloudflare's bottom line.
Yeah, I think it's great, and it's not really even stealing from them. There's a great quote in there. They said they wouldn't characterize it as stealing market share from anybody, but really earning that market share by doing a better product and at a more affordable rate. So I think it's they're definitely looking and gunning for those big three, but there's plenty of resource to go around, and we're only expanding into more platforms that need that serverless, and getting some redundancy built across more platforms than the big three, I think is a good move anyway.
Absolutely. Spreading that money around is a no-brainer. If we want to jump to number 2 on the list, today we got funding NetSPI raising $410 million in growth funding from KKR. And Adrian from Brazil, he's in Brazil for those of you that don't know where Adrian is today, asked for someone to please explain this madness to him. And I think the key thing in this particular one is that they don't ever say, and most investments announcements don't really say what percentage of the company they get for that money, right? And so getting a $410 million growth funding round, that could have been and may have been 100% buyout of NetSPI. It's impossible to really know what percentage of the company KKR, which is a private equity firm, really took in this, but I can almost guarantee it's a majority funding, well over 50%. And they're essentially doubling down in NetSPI's performance and expecting to probably, close some operational gaps, close up a little bit of inefficiencies that may exist. Excuse me, and find ways to take NetSPI to the next level with this massive investment.
No, I mean, NetSPI is a great company, and their performance has been phenomenal. They took that first round of money, and now they're just getting additional investment from the same places. And so there has to be some level of performance happening. So on top of the acquisition of Silent Break, that's near and dear to my heart. My cousin's over there and now at NetSPI, as well as my old team. So that acquisition was phenomenal from a experience and pen testing standpoint. But they've also built, attack surface reduction product. They've got breach and attack simulation. Yeah. They opened up their training, so they're branching out and they're filling a whole bunch of services and expanding. So, and I think in order to do that at the level and quality at which they're expecting, because of the people they have there, and maintain that talent pool, they really did need some influx of money. I didn't quite think that much money, but that's to be said.
It's probably not going all to straight operational capital, right? It's probably going to some kind of secondary where many of the stockholders or original stockholders are getting paid out on this. It's a partial acquisition is most likely what it comes to. But I do appreciate your point about the breadth of product, right? I really didn't realize that NetSPI's product breadth is as big as it is, right? They do everything from pen testing as a service to attack surface management, again, to university training, NetSPI University, which is a training system, attack simulation. They're in such a great, I guess, breadth of offensive security spots that it probably is something that's near and dear to your operational heart from a day-to-day basis too, right?
Yeah, their level of expertise. I mean, and the tools, like the acquisitions that they have acquired, were very strategic, from filling a gap at leveling up their pen test, leveling up, all the dark side ops training courses that were at Black Hat, DEF CON, all those were acquired and being rolled into the university. And then on top of that, their web app pen testing and attack surface monitoring platforms. Like, it's pretty crazy. They're doing good things, and it is exciting to see money flowing into places that are doing good things and being rewarded properly.
Very cool.
There was a couple more raises. One of the big ones that we had better talk about, Eclipsium. Eclipsium lands their 25.
Why do we have to hold on, T-Rob? Why do we have to talk about Eclipsium? What's the big deal there? Who do we know there? I mean, that place is small. Right?
What?
Yeah, 25 million. They don't need that. Well, I mean, maybe to afford Paul's cigar habits, and I'm sure he's demanding some expensive things over there.
I heard Paul's
kidding.
very, very expensive. I heard he demands like a massive humidor full of like Cubans and imports and all sorts of amazing stuff, and some bottles of whiskey to go with it. I mean, he's kind of a diva.
He's a little diva. No, Eclipsium doing great things in a huge area that we are now just starting to get some traction and visibility around firmware security and device supply chain. They're one of the few companies doing such big things with very ambitious goals. And Yuri and Alex over there, the founders, are phenomenal. So really good to see them get their money, get closed, and start to continue the mission of doing what they're doing. So I was very impressed to see that.
T-Rob, how closely are you connected to that market? Do you know the competitors to Eclipsium? And if so, are any of them differentiated in a way, and you may not know this, and that's fine, but differentiated in a way where, or is Eclipsium differentiated in a way that kind of can really run over that space? Because I feel like not too many companies are playing where Eclipsium plays.
Almost no one can play, at least at the level which Eclipsium is playing. There are other places that are trying to do some firmware scanning, firmware security checks. However, Eclipsium has acquired so much of the talent. Like, a lot of the people that were at Intel that developed the secure boot protocol, or that built the chips that they're actually analyzing, or even wrote some of the code for the firmware, as well as all the researchers over the years that have done anything around firmware and breaking, the very, very low level, low line code in SMM or BMC, IPMI, all of those protocols. They basically hired all that talent, and that's part of their research and development team. So they're uniquely positioned to have a very corner market on the talent pool of people that actually understand how this can be fixed. And then they've built a tool that does that integrity check so well that it is it's something to be said. So I've not seen anybody competing with the level at which they're doing it.
Good for them. I'm so glad Paul went over there. We're all rooting for you, Paul.
Yeah, he'll get the message out somehow. There was some other fundings. Let's see, Web3, obviously Blowfish, which is an interesting name, seeing says that it's probably got some collisions with encryption algorithms, but it's doing some Web3. They raised 11.8 million by Paradigm, and I think we should be seeing a lot more, I think, Web3, NFT, blockchain kind of investing. I think there's been quite a bit of hold on that just because of all the uncertainty with inside the crypto space, uncertainty from the war, the VCs kind of leveling out their market and following a lot of what the normal markets are doing. And so I'm surprised to see that much with inside of a Web3 platform. But I'm also surprised we're not seeing more of that, given that we're starting to see a little bit of a change and turnaround for some of the VCs.
Yeah, this stuff, it's funny you bring it up in the way that you bring it up, right? VC and investment related, because I look at these things and I consider myself a relatively smart guy. Like, I understand the fundamentals of blockchain. I understand the fundamentals of how this crypto stuff works, how the chain can operate as a ledger for, authenticity and confirmation, all those kinds of things. But I just struggle to find, like, what is the fundamental security requirement that the chain doesn't have on its own? Like, and I don't know if it's Blowfish. I skimmed through this particular article, and I feel like they're trying to do a bunch of things, and it's not very clear exactly what they do. But fundamentally, Tyler, can you help me understand, like, as a cybersecurity company, how would I even apply to securing a blockchain or securing a blockchain type of situation? Is it, the ability to look for auditing, the ability to look for transactions that are outside the norm? Like, what would Web3 or blockchain security really look like fundamentally?
No, I mean, that is a great point. And even knowing and testing many of these smart contracts and Web3 apps and D apps, it is confusing for me. So don't feel bad about that, because it is incredibly difficult to understand because they all do it a little different. But at a core, what we're running into is we have a lot of companies that have built-in smart contracts for the backside of transactions. You have different DeFi apps, different blockchains backing a company's ability to conduct transactions and make a record of those transactions. And they do that because there is a price and speed return that they're able to get. They can do, 250,000 transactions a second at a eighth of the cost to a traditional, payment network. And so they're leveraging a lot of these DeFi and smart contract apps and blockchains and technologies in order to make many of their technologies and back-end transactions more efficient and more cost-effective. And by doing that, what you end up with is you have different attacks. You've got phishing attacks. You've got DApp level attacks where you're ending up with different hijacks, DNS hijacks, routing hijacks. You end up with supply chain attacks. But all of these attacks are really attacking the transaction and the validity of the smart contracts and the actions that smart contract is taking. And so what's ended up happening is there's technologies that are being built in order to validate that the transaction that's being applied to the blockchain, because once it's applied to the blockchain, it's immutable, right? Like, your money is gone. There's not really a way to reverse that. So in context, in the transaction chain, as it's being done quickly and efficiently, there's technologies and securities being applied to validate and make sure that the transactions are valid and we're not flagging those for, anomalous behavior or a malicious activity. So that's a lot of what I think Blowfish is doing, is they're looking at the transactions in the wallet and what transaction is happening and whether or not it's a valid.
Yeah,
so to the, the whole, there's a lot of talk about regulation and trying to regulate this so that, cryptocurrencies are more, quote, usable for more people. And it's one thing to try to validate on the front end, but, as we know from just traditional security, attacks are going to happen. People are going to get their money stolen. And, in this case, this isn't, there's no regulation to get the money back. So what can be done, if anything, or is this just an area where people, if they're extremely risk averse, they don't go there? when it comes to
No,
cryptocurrency specifically.
You're spot on, right? And this is what most of these companies that are getting funding with inside the Web3 or blockchain space, this is what they're doing. They're reacting at the smart contract level with micro contracts or services or API calls that are protecting and validating the connections to the custodial
That's the
wallets
key.
or to the exchanges. And so this is where the technologies are coming in play.
Yeah, that's the key. As I read through this a little bit closer, right, you see there's even comments in here about since integrating our API, that they've scanned over 125 million proposed transactions and prevented over 11,000 wallet draining transactions from being signed by the user. Like, I think that's the fundamental key, is the prevention level that can do, right? And even if we don't get into the technology specifics of how they do what they do, which is the way I tend to work on projects like this, but even if we don't look at that, if you just look at who's involved, right? Machine learning engineers from Meta, okay, that's some smart people. ZeroX or Ox Labs, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. MakerDAO, and then most importantly, the one that caught my eye is there's some real experts at Trail of Bits. They're about as good as they get when it comes to cybersecurity consulting, research, like advanced technologies. Trail of Bits is one of the best out there, and they're involved in this as well. So I think this one's kind of interesting. And usually these Web3 things, I roll my eyes and move on, and mostly because I'm an idiot when it comes to the market and I just don't understand it, right? But this one's really got some perspective and some potential.
I mean, as you're building things with AI and machine learning to evaluate blockchain, because you're talking about large amounts of data, huge transactions, you're looking at the right companies and the right blend of technology and people in order to get this right. The model's proper. You've got a lot of people that know the machine learning models that need to be applied. They understand very large data sets. They understand what can go wrong in those very large data sets. So it is good to see. And again, as much as I was rolling my eyes the same way, and like some of this is really hard to digest just because it is so complex and so deep. It is something that is fundamental, because we are at a point where most major companies have smart contracts backing all kinds of stuff that we rely on day to day. We just don't know it. And so, our day-to-day involvement will probably not get too much further than what we're already doing. But what we have to do to secure that and our interactions with different companies is going to change if you are running enterprise-level networks and you have applications that need to communicate and do transactions of any sort to large corporations, because they are, they're already there. They're already using Web3. They're already adopting blockchain technologies to back a lot of their stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll get to a point where enterprises have a Web3/blockchain specialist on staff, just like they do for, AWS or Azure or other things that have become pretty commonplace?
Almost all places have at least a block division or blockchain division right now. Like if you're in the financial sector, you've got 2 or 3 people, if not more, that are looking at your smart contracts, looking at the Web3 development. You've got developers that are Web3 specific. Most of the major corporations have been there for a couple of years, and it's only going to continue. So yeah, we're going to start to see that as more of a norm inside of many of the companies that you would see regular job postings for development. That Web3 is going to be there from a security engineer standpoint for a lot of places, and AI and ML as well. So. Speaking of AI powered, we've got 6clicks raises $10 million for AI powered GRC platform as our next article. So I mean, we are seeing that.
Well done.
Yeah, that money and funding is only going to continue for things like AI and ML. Like as much as those are buzzwords, many of the places it has to come to fruition where we're leveraging machines and code more efficiently. And the places that know data science and understand the math behind it and why these things actually work and apply, they are making it work in their favor. Now, I will say there's a lot of smoke and mirrors within vendor space. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors in marketing. But there are a lot of initiatives that are leveraging good machine learning models. They're evaluating, and they have good people on staff to evaluate that. I think we're going to see a lot of companies come out of this where companies aren't going to build their own AI or ML models or secure them. They're going to build in a platform or a library or bolt on an integration that allows them to leverage an AI or ML model for what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's The transition to cloud was a massive shift, right? When we transitioned to mostly cloud-based systems going forward, and we're not done with that transition. We're maybe 20-30% of the way through. But as an investor, you need to be looking at the opening salvo of that transition, right? You want to be on the front end of that wave. And it's interesting because I've been hearing ML AI for probably 8-10 years, and it's just never gotten there. It never took hold. It never became the right way to do things. But I do think that's a timing thing. I don't think it's a fact that ML or AI is not the right way to do things. I think it's a timing thing, and we needed those systems to mature because they're so difficult to get right. And so what happened early on in the market was a lot of these ML-based or AI-based systems would be rolled out, wrapped in smoke and mirrors, exactly like you said, and presented as successful, and they were mediocre or moderate or barely were better than a human capability. I think we will get, and I think we're starting to turn the corner on this, that the next investment wave will be behind AI and ML when it comes to cybersecurity. The question is, what positions or what sections of cybersecurity get targeted first for that transition to kind of eliminate the human requirement and automate the day-to-day?
Yep. And there's going to be security implications. There's going to have to be evaluation of those models, of the attacks that are leveraging those models, the API endpoints, and the ability to pollute different parts of that. So there's a whole security aspect to this, and there's very few people actually looking at the security side and getting up to speed, because it's a lot of math. It's very difficult to kind of wrap your mind around and understand the whole picture without getting so far in the weeds that you're diving down rabbit holes that take a long time to learn. So
math is hard, right, Katie?
Math is hard, and I think actually I certainly didn't take math beyond when I had to in high school, but I think when most people say machine learning, they mean advanced math, and I think when most people say AI, they actually mean machine learning. I think there's actually very little AI going on. I think there's a lot of research. I think there's a lot of funding. I think there's a lot of doing in the AI space. But I think when it comes to actual what's in the market, what's available, what are people using, what's coming down the pike in the next year or 3, I don't think they mean AI. You know, what's that movie? I don't think you mean what you said, or it's like The Princess Bride or something.
Princess Bride. I don't think that.
Yeah, I don't think you know what you're saying when you say AI, because I think really most of what's being said when people throw around the AI term is advanced math. And I'm not saying those people aren't amazing and smart. They can do things that I can never ever do. But it's not AI.
The places
you know what,
doing
Katie, though,
AI,
though I think you're 100% right with the comment, right? That AI and ML is immature and not baked, and marketers like me have wrapped themselves around the terms and presented it as if it's the panacea to cybersecurity functionality. And I think you're right. But I think the question is, when do those systems and when do those models become effective enough to say, yeah, this is real now? And that's the fundamental question.
I think that is
right.
I think that is today, honestly. Like,
I think we're close to it as well. I agree with you.
Yeah, the places that are doing good AI and the places that have the neural networks that have been investing in the models and have things that almost look like sentient beings and are leveraging those models to do very, very interesting research and very interesting large data set correlation and analysis, they're doing it very well. And those models are getting to the maturity state that some of the models are getting a little scary. Same with ML. The places that are actually leveraging good ML model sets and they know what they're doing from the math side of this and doing the good stuff, they are doing and using ML in a capability that we are getting to the place where it is very difficult for things to slip by the computers. So
I agree with you. But what I'm going to say is that those companies are so few and far between right now. They are on the cutting edge. There are so few of them that are actually doing what you're saying, and those companies are incredibly exciting. But I think the majority of the time when people say AI, they mean really advanced math.
Yeah.
I would say that some of the smaller ones, yes. The places like Meta, like NVIDIA, Facebook, Google, general General Avionics, a lot of the larger companies that have the engineers and the math behind the models that they're using, like they're very large companies, very well funded, and they're putting it into consumer grade product, which that's the terrifying part, is the big places have the ability to test and use this on stuff currently happening. And that's when it starts to get interesting from other places that now can adapt and buy those models or buy the technology from them.
Yeah, I equate this to, I'm a chess player and I play on chess.com, and there's this big controversy right now about these two grandmasters that are playing, and one of them is being accused of cheating. And so they went through all of his games on chess.com, and it became abundantly clear that he played at a perfection level that was far too high, right? And I think the reality is here, you can almost equate that to the breakthrough moment in cybersecurity where AI/ML, and again, I'm merging those terms because I'm not a pro in that area, becomes valid, right? And you can equate that to the chess scene where it's like, okay, we're at the point now where one grandmaster is crushing another grandmaster by cheating with these ML-backed systems that are super complex and super smart. And there's a moment, and in the sci-fi world, it's that moment of when the AI becomes sentient moment, or whatever they call it. I think we're getting to the point where the AI is smart enough now to beat chess, to beat humans, and to actually provide a protection level that's real. But to Katie's point, how many systems are actually using it today at that level? A negligible amount. 90% of it is smokescreen. 90% of it is garbage, right? And as an analyst, whenever I heard that term, and Katie, I sure is going to agree, you roll your eyes and go, oh God, another ML firm, another AI-backed system, right? But at some point, that's going to become reality where that chess player beats the grandmaster. And I think we're getting very close to that from a timing perspective.
Hey, Tyler, do you want to play a game?
I love games. Let's do it, Katie. I'll give you my chess.com
name.
He
missed it. Damn it, Tyler. Come on.
Do you want to play a game? No. All those games end in the world being destroyed, Katie.
I was going to say, are we going nuclear here, Katie, or what are we doing?
Nuclear, that's right.
Thermonuclear warfare.
The joke. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, speaking again, another AI one, right to your point. The problem, and you're right, Katie, the ability for any, even very technical people, to validate what is integrated into a product without revealing IP and or knowing whether or not the AI product is as advertised is very difficult. So you really have to look at who's on the board, who the developers are, what their understanding is of AI and their ability to unravel those complex problems, look at the models they're using, how they're training it. And then that's about as good as you get. We see another one here where CISOs are being able to do real-time, was it Onyxia, I believe is how you pronounce it. They got $5 million in seed funding in order to do real-time AI monitoring of security postures. And this is advertised and written towards the CISO level, which, again, the CISOs and the boards are going to start asking for these things. They're going to wonder what our AI stance is. Are we looking at ML and rolling that into our security posture, our external attack surface reduction roadmap, all of these things? This is going to be a regular conversation. So we have to intelligently be able to evaluate products, evaluate what they're asking for, and then identify, is this actually something that is good and can do what it is advertising? And that's going to be a much more difficult proposition for those sitting below that executive level that has to look at this from a technical standpoint.
Yeah. I mean, this one about Onyxia here, I think that's how you pronounce it. I think so. I think they're automating or attempting to automate with an AI system humans, right? The first level. And I think that's the right way to tackle the problem. Don't try to bite off all of cybersecurity as a whole, or all of a cybersecurity program. Bite off the low level stuff. Bite off the stuff that's repeatable and common and frequent. And I mean, heck, if you could knock off 10 to 20% of that workload from most businesses, that's a massive amount of workload for a large enterprise, right? So And it sounds like that's what they're doing, talking about security priorities shifting, talking about enabling security teams to gain a holistic view of the enterprise security environment while killing off that lower third of activities that the security team has to handle. I think it's a good way to tackle it. It sounds like an interesting company.
I mean, there's good models out there for behavior and having good baselines and being able to use computers effectively where they're able to be used, and that is identifying anomalous behavior, identifying divergence, identifying in large data sets things that would take significant time for a human to find or even script out, like computationally difficult problems that are heavy on both human and technical assets and resources. That's what AI and ML is really designed and should shine. It's never going to replace the human. We're really good at finding patterns. We're really good at thinking creatively. We're really good at leveraging and responding to those things in the proper manner. However, machines are very fast at evaluating large swaths of data and identifying things that we would probably miss, or it would take us a longer time to identify. So I think there's good uses here. I mean, speaking to that, Qualys acquires Blue Hexagon's AI machine learning platform. So
God, AI everywhere this week.
Yeah, there's obviously being used and identified and integrated into places because it has its place. But I'm with you, Katie. I'm still a little hesitant on how good and how well these mathematicians and model sets have spent their time in integrating, and again, what level of comfort we're going to adopt. Just allowing the machine to handle things. Are we going to get lazy with that? Are we going to be able to focus more time on more important things? Like, that's kind of the hope, but I think it has a two-sided sword there that really needs to be addressed and make sure that we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think that, the advanced math or even machine learning, I think a lot of this is machine learning. I think, the pivot point to sentience is it's just beyond where so much of this technology is, but we can leave that aside for the moment because I could literally argue that for hours. But in terms of the heavy computational analysis across those large swaths of data, without automation, we're buried. I mean, I just read something this week that says something like 40% of technology professionals' time is spent on manual tasks that could very, very easily be automated. So in a typical 40-hour work week, that means approximately 16 hours, right? And we know that most people in tech, in cybersecurity, work more than 40 hours a week. So that's just a huge amount of time that's being wasted. And, we're talking about things like AI and ML, but really a lot of this is automation. Leveraging math, of course, but a lot of it comes down to automation. And you're exactly right. Like, there is no need for humans to be doing this. We have so much higher reasoning, and humans build machines, right? So, maybe there'll be a pivot point where machines overtake human. I don't think we're quite there yet. So, freeing up that time for correlating all this data, it's a waste of time. We're never going to be automated out of jobs. We might have to learn new skills. We might have to drop things that, people have done, and we might need to train them up. And, we can argue about where public funding goes, but like, we don't have people trained to drive horse and buggies right now either, right? Or, how many people are really skilled in metalworking or fixing oil lamps. Like, we evolve, and we will have to evolve our workforce to deal with it. But I don't think humans are ever going to be automated out of a job. They might be forced to learn things that they don't want to learn necessarily, but I think
history will repeat itself.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's where things like Blue Hexagon, is it true AI? Maybe on the precipice. I don't know. Haven't really dug in there too much, but I think we're talking more about automation and machine learning, but it's absolutely critical. Absolutely critical.
Especially with large data lakes like Qualys is dealing with. That's an interesting one. Another interesting one is a new technology called Hey Login. He had this on here, read through the page, was trying to understand just how they're doing this, and I get it. I think it's another good way to get to kind of that passwordless state, get to a point where we're leveraging things other than master passwords. Their big push is we don't have a master password like other solutions. It's two-factor secure by design. I am a little wary of that claim because they're essentially pushing a request out to a phone, and you're saying, hey, this is me logging in now, and you're authorizing that. That technically is not two-factor. Like we'll get down to the nuts and bolts of it. And we've already talked about today issues with phones and having phones for authorization devices. So well, I think it's a great step in the right direction. I would like to kind of play with it, see what they're doing differently. They've got some good crypto algorithms in there that looks like they're trying to think a little differently about passwords, making it work with just about everything. I'm a little hesitant about leveraging my phone as the source for a password right this second without another factor being involved. So great idea. Interesting product to go check out and look at for yourself, but I'm not as convinced as
I'm not convinced either. They have a total of, according to Crunchbase, they have a total of 1.9 million euros in funding, which is next to nothing across 5 investors, probably all angels, and 1 to 10 employees. Look, man, if you do it, great. If you're doing it in a secure way, that's wonderful. I think it needs to be validated, vetted by pros like T-Rob for sure. And quite frankly, pick a better company name. I think it's a stupid company name, but that's just me being grumpy old man.
Sure, but on the other hand, on the other hand, if you do need a master password, hey, login, I'm really skeptical of your technology is a great master password.
Yeah,
that would work well, Katie.
Oh, yeah. I'm hoping, like, again, a different approach to passwords. I'm all for getting rid of passwords because I have a large swath of billions of passwords at my disposal, so they're usually all pretty horrible, and no one does good.
And someone else. Just to clarify for a listening audience, they are someone else's password.
Yeah, they are someone else's passwords.
These are not your personal passwords.
Well, they may be, but I'm sure mine are in there somewhere.
They are procured. We'll just say they have been procured from various places.
They're procured and analyzed and notified. There's a couple other tools to look at. In fact, 2 different tools around adversary emulation and simulation. Those 2 words being interchangeable and not being the same thing, but that's for another day. Adversary simulation for blue teamers. I think this is going to be more common. We've started to see this already where, again, pen tests are usually not the answer for good security testing. And I'm a pen tester, so that's obviously kind of not the way that most people think. But really, most places have a maturity model that they can leverage other tools, tabletops, purple teams, simulation tools, attack surface reduction tools, all the things that you should be doing. I think that is much better use of your money, budget, and time rather than a pen test. So seeing this developed for blue teamers specifically, I think we're going to see a lot more tools like this, and I think there are some great tool links in here for doing some of the things that you could and should do as a security team yourself before you bring in a pen tester or a red team. If you're at the point where you're ready for a red team, then you've done all the diligence, and I better not find any exploitable things, and it better be a pretty good challenge for me because I'm pretty expensive otherwise. So
it is very expensive. At least that's what I've heard. At least that's what I've been told. T-Rob's super expensive.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sure. Again, there's another one for micro emulation plans. I don't know what this one was called. It was I didn't see it in there, but another 2 blue team adversary emulation and simulation tools with inside of the links. Go ahead and check those out. securityweekly.com, ESW, and click on the episode, which this episode is 291. Let's see, looking further, any other ones you guys really want to cover? What's going on? This was an interesting article. I actually read this one all the way through the what's going on in cybersecurity VC investments.
Yeah.
I thought
that was fantastic. And that was
a fantastic article. for a couple reasons, right? Ryan Narain is one of the best journalists in cyber. Like, I've known him forever. He is top freaking notch. And then Will Lin, who's been a guest on this show multiple times. Sadly, I've not been able to interview him. I think I got a chance to interview him one time. Will Lin is just a freaking brilliant. And then Cedra, Ahmed Lafort was the other guest. And I think I read this one top to bottom too. And I don't read every article top to bottom. We just see so many of them. But this one really gives you great insight into trying to understand the thought process behind how investments have worked in cyber for the last couple of years and how things have really changed. And one of the things I got from this was just a fairly open discussion by Will and Cedra saying, look, we don't know. We don't know what the future is going to hold, right? The last 5 years, if you ask these same interview questions to these same people, they'll be like, yep, everything's going up and right. Everything's going to triple in value in the next 2 years. And now there's this constant state of worry and concern by investors saying, are we at the bottom? Like, literally, when you lose 50 to 70% of your valuation across your portfolio, it makes you rethink how you're going to approach cyber, and will an up and right come? And I think at the end of the day, everybody knows it's going to come back, but it's a function of when, and it's a function of timing. You know, when do you get in? If you get in now, you got to hold for a certain number of years, 3-5 years before you can expect a return. And so anybody who's interested in how VC works in cyber and what the future might hold definitely has to read this article.
Yeah, I think getting into that growth mode and understanding why the growth has changed, how you can, if you are a startup, a founder, if you're working with inside of one of the companies that was funded, like what that means for you, how you actually button down and look at your burn rate. You look at things like, you know, you may only have 2 to 3 years of runway, but you have 5 years to get your valuation up to the point where it needs to be. That provides a pretty big problem that you need to address beforehand, before getting to that problem. And those are things that the whole article is fantastic. It gives you a lot of good insight into things to think about, things to prepare for, and ways to actually get through this kind of uncertain time.
Yeah, and the key here, and they iterate it throughout the article, and Will said it last time he was on as well, is really, it's profitable growth now. It's profitable growth. Change your mindset. We are in it for a long haul. And is that going to be 18 months? Is that going to be 36 months? They both say very clearly they don't know. They give their best guesses, but it is the long haul. And if you expect a quick flip, you're in the wrong game right now.
Yeah, you know, I think there's a contrarian view to be taken here to a point, right? When everything was asinine crazy and you didn't have to worry about anything about profitability, about revenue, you know, you just needed to just straight up burn and grow as fast as possible. When that was the world, there was a case for, hey, slow it down, find a way to get profitable. You're going to be much more healthy. And there's a number of companies that took that approach, right? Early on, Rumble did that. Early on, Himanshu's company, Data Theorem, did that. They didn't take much capital, if any, and they grew it in a healthy way right from day one. And they're all sitting pretty right now. But I also think it lends itself to a counterpoint today, meaning at some point, the downward pressure on the market, the downward pressure on the VC valuations will become so low that the counterpoint of, hey, we need to figure out how to grow faster and burn harder will come back into play, right? And it's one of those situations where, you know, when everybody's greedy, you run for the hills. When everybody's worried and fearful, you should be greedy, right? That's general market philosophy. And I think it comes into play when it comes to cyber investing as well. I think there's an opportunity right now for companies being born today to start growing faster and harder over the next 3 to 5 years and use the market momentum as it returns to hit escape velocity. It's going to be neat to see how this plays out.
Sure, it's not all that different from just general stock market investing.
Correct. Yep.
That is the hard part, is knowing what you want to do and then seeing those that do it differently, how they actually play out.
Buy low, sell high.
Yep.
Yeah, I've had that backwards this year. You got to remind me a little more frequently, Katie.
Yeah, my crypto was definitely that way this year. That was rough. What lurks in the shadows of cloud security? That was an interesting one. Things we all kind of know. There's a lot of tools being developed, a lot of people looking at, and the focus shifting to making sure your cloud security is buttoned down. You're looking at configurations. There's tools for cloud native app protections and identifying those. I think people are at that point where we all know that the cloud is here. We all have move to the cloud and then move back to a nice hybrid, because we can't do just a cloud unless you're a very specific type of company or vertical. And so we're at that point where we have both environments to care about. And I don't think we fully have an understanding of all of the implications for cloud security. Yeah, there's a general configuration. There's a lot of the attack surface management and automated tools of checking. But the real security implications of single sign-on, what the business risk is, where things can actually go wrong, and then the consistent changing, the very fast pace of changing things and adopting things in the cloud for development and prod, and not keeping a lot of that separate. I think that's where we're making a lot of the mistakes, and that's where I'm finding a lot of the vulnerabilities to companies.
Yeah, I break cloud up into a few tiers. I have the configuration state, which would be your CSPM market, the runtime protection of the workloads or code in operation, which would be maybe a CNAP or CWPP or even an observability play. I think there's an API kind of play that's going to happen because of the breadth of application overlay that will occur. And then the one that I think not as many people are talking about would be companies like Permisso that are doing, hey, we're not going to even focus on any of that stuff. We're going to focus on the interplay of authentication, authorization, and accounts, and who does what. Focus on the tracking of the individual accounts, the individual tokens, the actions that they take, and look for deviation and anomalous behavior in those spaces. And there's some great companies that are targeting that fourth area as well.
I think that's a great place to be. I mean, API security and identity security for single sign-on is huge. I would actually add, and I hope at some point they add that into their repertoire, is the permissions, app permissions, and the permissions that identities are being provided via those JWT SAML tokens. All of the things that are providing identity to us. There's a lot of over permissioned, and there's a lot of weirdness with inside of apps and cross tenancy and communications that happen. So
I think that's space. A massively growing area in the very, very near future for sure.
Yep. And the very last article we have is The Art of Selling to Cybersecurity People. I think this was definitely a good article, especially if you're in sales or if you're trying to sell not only yourself, but maybe a consultancy or sell yourself, selling your service. It covers a lot of things. The TLDRs, build a relationship, skip your show and tell. The canned scripts are canned. They're going to get canned. They're not worth doing. And then integration matters. All of those points are very accurate. And I think anytime anybody sells to me, if they already have a relationship, I'll listen to you because I trust you and you're there for a reason. That's where Eclipsium, I look at their product, I see what they're doing because I trust the people over there. I trust the relationships I've built, but that would only happen because of relationship. The show and tell piece, I ask for that once you're to that point. And then there's just no canned scripts. The integration is great. And places that are doing these things from a selling standpoint, I think is definitely how you want to sell to high performers, highly intelligent people, and people that get mass bombarded with ads every single day and have to know a lot of products anyway, and the ins and outs of the skeletons in the closets of each of those products. So it's a good article.
Yeah, highly recommend this article. Mike Prevet is the author. I recommend signing up to, if you're interested in the funding world in cyber, he runs a newsletter, a phenomenal newsletter called Security Funded. Sign up to his newsletter, read this piece. It's a great piece. Tell Mike you said hello. He's a very, very friendly guy. Connect with him. He's a good person to get to know.
Excellent. Well, with that, thank you, Tyler and Katie. Appreciate you guys joining me today and helping me get this show done while Adrian's gone. Adrian, we miss you. You're the best. Your illustrious hair is definitely better than mine. But, hey, we held down the fort. And big thanks to everybody listening this week for Enterprise Security Weekly. Have a good week.